Niagara Falls is breathtaking. Its thunderous roar, rising mist, and raw power leave millions in awe each year. But behind the beauty lies a haunting past. For centuries, people have flirted with its deadly edge, some seeking fame, others caught by fate. Today, we're uncovering 5 of the most tragic deaths ever recorded at Niagara Falls. It was a warm, sunny morning in July 1930 when George Stathakis stood at the edge of history and Niagara Falls. A 46-year-old Greek immigrant living in Buffalo, New York, George wasn't your average dreamer. He believed he had big ideas about life, the afterlife, and our purpose on Earth, and he was determined to share them with the world. But first, he needed the world to notice him. To grab that attention, George planned something truly daring. He would survive a plunge over Niagara Falls in a custom-built barrel. It wasn't just a stunt, it was a bold statement. Months of planning went into the project. George constructed a massive barrel, 10 feet long, 5 feet wide, made of solid oak and reinforced with steel. The whole thing weighed nearly 2,000 pounds. Inside, he packed oxygen tanks, food, and everything he thought he'd need to stay alive during the fall and the wait for rescue. But George wasn't going alone. By his side, or rather, in the barrel with him, was Sonny Boy, his beloved pet turtle, said to be over 150 years old. Bringing Sonny Boy along showed how confident George was in his barrel's design. This wasn't just a stunt to him, it was personal. As the barrel was sealed and rolled into the river, the sound of rushing water grew louder. The current pulled it closer and closer to the edge until, like countless gallons before it, it plunged 167 feet over the mighty Horseshoe Falls. Onlookers held their breath as the barrel disappeared into the mist, swallowed by the thunder and chaos below. To everyone's amazement, the barrel survived the drop. It bobbed up at the base, looking battered but intact. It seemed George had pulled off the impossible. But then, things took a turn. Red Hill Sr., a local Niagara Falls daredevil and rescue expert, had warned George. He said the barrel was too heavy, that its size could cause it to get trapped in the deadly whirlpool currents below the falls. And tragically, that's exactly what happened. The barrel didn't float downstream. It spun violently in the powerful back currents, unreachable by rescuers. Inside, George waited, breathing recycled air in complete darkness, listening to the roar of water around him. His oxygen, meant to last about 8 hours, slowly ran out. Rescuers tried everything, but the churning water made recovery nearly impossible. It took over 22 hours to finally free the barrel. When they opened it, the result was heartbreaking. George had suffocated hours before help arrived. The very barrel he believed would protect him had become his tomb. A symbol of hope and ambition turned into a tragic mistake. But not everything was lost. Sonny Boy, the little turtle, miraculously survived. The creature became a kind of folk hero, appearing in news stories, children's books, and museum exhibits. In a strange way, Sonny Boy carried a piece of George's dream into the world. Today, George's barrel sits on display at Niagara Falls. It's more than a relic. It's a reminder of what can happen when human ambition meets the raw force of nature. A tribute to courage, and a sobering warning about how even the best laid plans can go heartbreakingly wrong. It was a chilly spring day in April 2017, and the thunder of Niagara Falls echoed like a warning through the crisp air. The river surged, wild and unforgiving, just as it always had. But on this particular day, it would claim the life of someone who once seemed untouchable by its power, a man who had already beaten the odds and lived to tell the tale. That man was Kirk Jones. Kirk, 53 years old and originally from Michigan, wasn't a stranger to the fury of Niagara Falls. In 2003, he had stunned the world by surviving a plunge over the 167-foot Horseshoe Falls, completely unprotected. No helmet, no barrel, nothing. Just a man, free-falling into one of the most dangerous natural wonders on Earth. Miraculously, he walked away with only minor injuries. Some called it divine intervention, others pure luck. At the time, Kirk had been battling personal issues and many believed the jump was a desperate cry for help. But against all logic, he survived. For a short while, he was a media sensation, the man who lived. But fame faded fast. Kirk was fined, charged for his stunt, and banned from Canada for life. Still, something in him never let go of that moment. Over the years, he talked about the falls as if they were more than just a place, as if they had become part of who he was. It wasn't just about surviving anymore, it was about returning. He believed there was something left unfinished, something more he had to prove. So he began to plan his comeback. In early 2017, Kirk hatched a bold, if bizarre, plan. This time, he wouldn't just jump. He'd ride over the falls inside a giant inflatable plastic ball, the kind used for zorbing. His logic? If people could roll down hills inside these things and walk away unscathed, why not survive Niagara Falls? It sounded absurd, even reckless. But to Kirk, it was a ticket to a second shot at fame. He hoped the stunt would launch an entertainment career and give him a platform to share his story. Kirk wasn't alone on this final journey either. With him was his pet boa constrictor, Misty. Just like Sonny Boy, the turtle who rode over the falls with George Stithakis in 1930, Misty's presence added a strangely personal element to the already surreal plan. On the day of the stunt, witnesses saw the large ball bobbing in the river, spinning wildly in the rapids as it approached the edge, and then it was gone, swallowed by the mist and roar of the falls. When the ball was later recovered downstream, it was empty. No sign of Kirk, no sign of Misty. For weeks, search and rescue crews scoured the area, holding on to hope that maybe, just maybe, Kirk had survived again. But that hope vanished on June 2, 2017, when Kirk's body was found about 12 miles downstream. Misty was never recovered. Kirk Jones, the man who once defied Niagara's deadly grip, had finally been claimed by it. His second attempt wasn't a miracle. It was a tragedy. It left behind questions that still haunt those who followed his story. Why go back? Why tempt fate after already surviving the impossible? Maybe he truly believed lightning could strike twice. Maybe he wanted to reclaim that fleeting moment of invincibility. Or maybe, deep down, he felt a pull, an unshakable connection to the falls that he could never fully explain. Whatever the reason, Kirk's story is a stark reminder. Some forces of nature aren't meant to be challenged. Niagara Falls, in all its beauty and power, demands respect. And for those who don't heed its warning, the price can be ultimate. It was June 5, 1990, a warm, sunny day in Niagara Falls, New York. The park buzzed with visitors snapping photos and soaking in the breathtaking view of the thundering waters. But amid the tourists was one man with a very different goal. Jesse Sharp, a 28-year-old experienced kayaker from Tennessee, hadn't come just to admire the falls. He came to conquer them. Jesse wasn't a reckless thrill-seeker. He was a skilled whitewater kayaker known for tackling some of the toughest rapids in North America. He had trained for years and believed he could become the first person to successfully kayak over Niagara Falls. No barrel, no protective gear, just a sleek 12-foot custom fiberglass kayak built for speed and precision. No helmet, no life jacket, just Jesse in the river. To him, this wasn't just a stunt, it was a leap toward fame. Jesse believed that if he pulled it off, it could be his ticket to a career in movies, television, or professional stunt work. He had a vision, a name remembered alongside the great daredevils of history, etched into the legend of Niagara itself. But there was one problem. Going over the falls like this was strictly illegal. Authorities had banned such attempts after a long and tragic history of fatalities. But Jesse wasn't one to be told no. He believed his skills, training, and preparation would make the difference. He spent months getting ready, studying the river, timing the currents, perfecting every maneuver. Then, just before 2 p.m., with the summer sun high overhead, he launched his kayak into the Niagara River. The current was swift, but Jesse stayed in control. His strokes were smooth and sure as he paddled toward the falls. The roar of the water grew deafening. Mist clouded the air as Jesse neared the edge. Onlookers stared in disbelief, unsure if they were witnessing a stunt or a suicide attempt. Just before the drop, Jesse raised his paddle high into the air, his signature gesture, one final display of confidence, and then he vanished. The kayak plunged over the 167-foot Horseshoe Falls, swallowed instantly by the churning white water below. Silence fell across the crowd. All eyes scanned the lower river, waiting, hoping for Jesse to resurface. But he never did. Rescue teams rushed in. Within the hour, they found the kayak, battered and empty, hundreds of yards downstream. But Jesse was gone. His body was never recovered. To this day, his fate remains one of the fall's enduring mysteries. Some say he underestimated the sheer force of the plunge. Others believe he may have been knocked unconscious or trapped beneath the powerful undercurrents. We'll likely never know. What's certain is that the river, with all its beauty and might, refused to be conquered that day. Jesse's story splits opinion. To some, he was chasing greatness, pushing the boundaries of what's possible. To others, he was a victim of reckless ambition, blinded by dreams of fame. Whatever the perspective, his final journey serves as a sobering reminder. Niagara Falls is not a stage. It's a force of nature, unpredictable, untamed, and unforgiving. Jesse Sharp set out to make history. In a way, he did, but not in the way he imagined. Instead of launching a career, his name now lives on as one of the many souls lost to the falls, a cautionary tale of courage, ambition, and the steep price of daring dreams. It was a hot summer afternoon on August 5, 1951, when William Red Hill Jr. stood at the edge of the Niagara River. The air buzzed with anticipation as crowds gathered, eager to watch yet another daring feat at the falls. But what they didn't know was that this wouldn't be just another stunt. It would be the final chapter in a man's desperate bid for recognition and the moment that changed Niagara's daredevil culture forever. Red Hill Jr. came from a legacy of river legends. His father, William Red Hill Sr., was a celebrated hero in Niagara, famous for rescuing stranded tourists and warning thrill-seekers about the river's deadly power. Red Jr. had grown up in those shadows, chasing the reputation of a man whose bravery had earned him reverence. He tried to follow the same path, working as a riverman, diving into the currents for rescue missions, and even dabbling in a few stunts of his own. But nothing seemed to earn him the fame he so badly wanted. By the early 1950s, his life was unraveling. Financial struggles mounted, and his once strong family name had begun to fade into memory. In his mind, only one thing could restore it: a daring stunt that would grab headlines and immortalize him like his father before him. So Red devised a plan, but not a good one. He decided to go over Niagara Falls in a homemade contraption he simply called the Thing. And it was, in every sense, a thing. Slapped together from oversized inner tubes, fishing nets, canvas straps, and sandbags, it looked more like a pile of garbage than a protective vessel. Unlike the carefully engineered barrels others had used, Red's Thing lacked any real structure or safety. It was flimsy, unpredictable, and wildly unsafe. People tried to talk him out of it. Friends, family, experts, everyone warned him this was suicide. But Red wouldn't hear it. This was his moment, and no amount of reasoning could pull him back. With crowds lining the riverbanks and reporters ready, Red climbed into the jumbled mess of materials and set off down the river. For a while, the contraption bobbed and twisted toward the edge, wobbling like it might fall apart before even reaching the drop. As it neared the brink, spectators held their breath. Then it went over, disappearing into the mist and thunder below. Seconds later, the river spit out its answer. Pieces of canvas, shredded tubes, and tangled netting began washing downstream. The Thing had been torn apart by the falls with terrifying ease. Red was gone. His body was recovered the next day near the Maid of the Mist landing, broken and unrecognizable. The very stunt that was meant to save his legacy had destroyed him instead. Red Hill Jr.'s death sent a shockwave through the Niagara community. What had once been celebrated as brave, even romantic, suddenly looked reckless and tragic. In the aftermath, authorities cracked down. Permits for stunts became harder to get. Safety regulations were tightened. Penalties grew steeper. The age of freewheeling daredevilry at Niagara Falls began to fade. Red's story is one of ambition turned desperation, of legacy turned loss. He didn't get the fame he hoped for, but in a strange way, he left a mark. His tragic fall forced the world to look at Niagara Falls differently, not just as a place of spectacle, but as a force of nature demanding respect. And because of that, Red Hill Jr., even in death, helped make the falls a little safer for those who followed. It was a clear July morning in 1920 when Charles Stevens, a 58-year-old barber from Bristol, England, stood at the edge of the Niagara River, staring down one of nature's most powerful wonders. Behind him, the crowd watched in curious silence. Ahead, the thundering roar of Niagara Falls promised either glory or a grave. Charles wasn't a professional daredevil. He wasn't rich or famous. He was a father of 11, a working man who had grown restless with the ordinary. Inspired by tales of thrill-seekers who had tried, and sometimes survived, the plunge over the falls in barrels, he was drawn across the Atlantic with a singular goal: become the first Englishman to survive Niagara Falls in a barrel, and, hopefully, turn that glory into fortune. The daredevil scene at Niagara was buzzing in those days. A few had made the drop and lived to tell the tale, reaping brief moments of fame. Charles saw it as a ticket out of obscurity. He believed that with the right design and enough courage, he could beat the falls and cash in on the spotlight that followed. His barrel was built to be tough, crafted from stout oak, bound with metal hoops, and reinforced to take the crushing blow of the 167-foot plunge. At its base sat a 100-pound anvil, meant to act as ballast, to keep the barrel upright during the fall. It made sense in theory. The heavier the bottom, the more stable the fall. But nature rarely plays along with theories. Charles, calm and determined, climbed into his wooden capsule, shut in by the sound of the water crashing around him. His assistants gave the barrel a final push into the current, and just like that, he was off. The river seized the barrel instantly, tossing it like a toy in a bathtub. It spun, rocked, and slammed against waves as it raced toward the precipice. The crowd, now breathless, watched as the barrel edged closer to the drop. It teetered for a split second, then plunged into the mist with a thunderous crash, swallowed by the raw force of the falls. Then came silence. For a few agonizing minutes, the crowd waited, eyes scanning the frothing water below, hoping for a sign, anything. Then debris began to surface. Pieces of shattered wood drifted downriver. And then, among the wreckage, something more horrifying: a human arm, still strapped inside a section of the barrel. Charles Stevens had not survived. The very anvil meant to keep him stable had become the cause of his death. The weight had dragged the barrel with such force that when it slammed into the rocks below, it exploded on impact. The structure had offered no protection. There was no second chance, no miracle survival, only tragedy. Charles Stevens' fatal attempt was a sobering moment for Niagara Falls and for the daredevil culture that had flourished around it. His story didn't end in glory or riches, but in wreckage and mourning. Authorities later used his death as a cautionary tale, discouraging future stunts and warning others that the falls, no matter how inviting the fame, were no place for amateurs or illusions of control. He was a man chasing a dream, hoping for immortality. Instead, he became a warning, a footnote in the long history of those who underestimated nature's fury. Charles Stevens' story remains not one of success, but of stark reality. The falls don't negotiate, and even the best laid plans can be torn apart in seconds by a force that doesn't care who you are.